After the tone, please record your name. Has joined the conference.
Okay, hopefully you should have. There we go.
Okay, yep,
So,
I have control.
okie doke, so I'll let you fire away.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully you all remember me from the other day. So I'm going to be walking through the fault process today. So raising faults,
Line muted.
looking at engineers' notes and the like. So just like provisioning, the whole fault process is wizard-based, but sort of unlike provisioning, where you've got the option to install new lines, faults are always raised against lines that are within your inventory. So if you like, the starting point of raising a fault is always finding the line that you wish to either line test or log a fault against. So something that we didn't really cover the other day was portal search. So you see top right here, there's a search box, and this enables you to search for any number of things.
Left the conference.
From telephone numbers, postcodes, customer name, customer account number, order reference, fault reference, Siebel reference, all that kind of stuff. So the sort of things you'd probably want to search for, you can generally search for here, top right. Telephone number is by far and away the most common search, as you'd expect. So in this example, if a customer phones up and says, I've got a fault with my line is dead, the first thing you would do is grab their phone number and search for their phone number. As you can see there, there's one result returned for this phone number, and when I click on it, we'll see the installation screen that we saw the other day. So this is the screen where you can confirm the customer name, where the line's installed, what the type of line is, what features we know the line's got, a historic order and fault history, and customer leaving notifications, and so on. Now, this screen's useful in a fault scenario because it tells you what's going on with the line. So in this case, there's not a great deal, but if, for example, there was an order, a pending order with perhaps a commit date of today, if the customer's phoning up today saying, hey, my line doesn't work, this gives you a little bit of an upfront clue as to why that might be. It's a provisioning-related issue as opposed to a regular business-as-usual line was working fine and all of a sudden it stopped. Likewise, if there are any historical in-flight trouble reports, you'll see them here. So you'll know, if you can see an in-flight trouble report, you will know that there's already one that's been raised, perhaps by one of your colleagues, or perhaps it's one that you did earlier and the customer's just phoning back for an update. So in the absence of anything telling as to why the line might be dead, where you head first is this link here, investigate problem with the line. So if you click that, it will take you to the first step in our fault wizard. I'll scroll down a bit. So at the top there, some details about the line, so who the customer is and the care level. Obviously, care level is pretty important because that gives you an indication as to how quickly OpenReach will fix the fault once it's raised. So care level 2 being next working day after the next working day. So in this particular case, Monday would be the estimated resolution time. This expedite section here is something you may or may not see based on your role. So there's a specific role called no expedite, which you can add to a user's account, or you may find it's been added to yours, which prevents the use of fault expediting. Now, the reason we have that role and the reason this is controllable is that fault expedite is very expensive. So the worst case scenario is if it's a line on care level 1 and you expedite it all the way up to level 4, OpenReach will charge you a one-off fee of £735. So it's pretty expensive. Consequently, there exists a role in the portal to remove that functionality from certain users. I'm going to skip over that, and you'll notice here the bottom section of the screen is divided into two halves. It's either select the answer from the list or please answer our questions. So the idea really is either you pick the structured question code, so what's wrong with the line, bell not ringing, no dial tone, overhearing, etc. Or if you don't know which answer to pick, you can use these questions here at the bottom. So you can say it's a call-related problem. Does the user have dial tone? No, they don't. Is all the equipment unplugged except one phone into the master socket? Yes. And you'll see there as I answered the last question, it auto-populated the most appropriate structured question there. So as time goes by, you'll probably find you don't use these drop-downs here at the bottom. You'll just pick the most appropriate structured question here from the list. You'll notice as soon as no dial tone was selected, the button here changed to perform line test. Not every structured question code requires a line test. So for example, damage report wiring the button just changes to next, because you wouldn't do a line test in a damage report wiring scenario. So really the portal's trying to work out whether a line test is required. In this particular scenario, where the customer's phoning up to say, my cabling is damaged, then you wouldn't need to raise a line test because you know what the problem is, the cable's damaged. I hit no dial tone again, and now perform line test. Okay, we need to wait a few seconds while a line test is carried out. And you'll obviously already be familiar with the line test process via the existing COFAX solution, so it's kind of similar here. Line tests on PSTN lines are very, very good. So generally speaking, if it finds no fault, that's generally because there isn't a fault. And if a fault is found, it's generally accurate to its location. ISDN2 line tests, whilst they exist, they're not very good. So it's possible to do a line test on an ISDN2, but you may have had experience in the past where you've encountered, line test comes back as fine, whereas there is a problem, or vice versa. So, I would say take all ISDN2 line test results with a pinch of salt.
Has joined the conference.
ISDN30, there is no line test, so as a result, you'll never see a line test offered to you when you're logging faults on ISDN30. So for ISDN, you may not know that OpenReach have access to a much higher quality line test that isn't available via EMP. So when you log a fault on an ISDN2 or an ISDN30 line, the first step for OpenReach is for them to do a line test, which takes a few minutes and gives them an idea as to where the fault is. So unlike PSTN faults where you do the line test and OpenReach won't do a subsequent line test, they'll just take the line test that you've done as indication of where the fault exists or not. ISDN2 and ISDN30 faults, the first step is for them to do a line test, sort of a proper line test, if you will. So this was a PSTN line, and you'll notice here that no fault was found after automated testing. So the only option in this scenario is to book a fault with an appointment. Now, this particular screen is probably one of the more complex in the system. When I say complex, I really mean complex for us to build, mainly because the options you have available to you in this particular scenario take into account lots of different factors. So the type of line, the care level of the line, how recently the line was installed, what the result of the line test was, and so on. All of those factors come together to give you a set of options. So because this is a line that's only recently installed, there is no other option. If it was a line that's over 30 days old, there would be another option here to to raise an extended test service fault, which is where OpenReach tests the line every 4 hours with a hope to find, to encounter a intermittent fault, or to find it red-handed as such. So you might find that you've done a line test and it's come back no fault found, but the customer's saying, look, it's intermittent, it comes and goes. So in that scenario, you can hit the intermittent test service button and OpenReach will do more line tests for you over the next 24 hours. That's not option's not available here because the line is too new. Okay, so I'm going to hit report fault with appointment booking, and again, top right, you'll notice we are looking for OpenReach, and there we go. So just like the provisioning wizard, there's a appointment screen where we've asked for the earliest appointment, and you can see the flexible appointments there in red. And I'm going to pick Friday the 5th. Okay, so we need to reserve that appointment with OpenReach. So their test system is not always the fastest. Having a good hard think about it. Okay, still waiting. Okay. Perhaps I'll try another appointment. Yeah, that test system is a little flaky, so it does sometimes not accept requests. and sometimes it goes down altogether. So it might be the case that their test system just fallen over. Okay, I think I'm going to have to resort to plan B. Okay, all right, I will okay, I will switch to the production system. Having said that, it's come back to life. So yeah, their test system's just woken up again, and you can see that the next step is for us to supply contact details, and then we have to go on to describe the fault. And we need to supply premises access times. So the premises next closes at 7 p.m. tonight and opens tomorrow morning at 7:30. You can supply TRCs here if you want to pre-authorize the amount of time an engineer can spend on site, or you can also set up a temporary call divert if the customer wants their calls routed elsewhere. Okay, and that's all there is to placing a fault. So if I hit yes, I should get a reference. There we go.
The conference.
So just like the order process, once you get to the end, you'll get a reference number. And when you hit that, you'll see our fault screen. So just like the order screen, there's a graphic on the right-hand side, so you can see the current status of the fault within Openreach's system. Unlike orders, there's quite a few steps involved in a fault, and your fault may or may not progress through all of them. Sometimes it sort of jumps around and skips steps and so on, depending on the nature of the fault. On the left-hand side here, you can see some details about the fault, so who the customer is, their address, when the fault was logged, if it's appointed, when it's appointed for, who logged the fault, and so on. And at the top, you've got the shortcuts box, just like you do orders. If I refresh the screen, there we go. Excellent. This fault has hit Openreach's systems. It's now new, and there's a Siebel reference that they have allocated to that order, to this fault. So I hit Show All. Just like orders, you can see a list of KCIs that Openreach have sent. In this case, there's 2, and they're just confirming the appointment there. So I refresh the page. There we go. As this fault's received another KCI, there are some additional options here. So you can cancel the fault, change the appointment, send a note to Openreach, set up a temporary call diver, or amend the TRC band. Now, the conversation view screen is where you would go to look at engineer's notes for this fault. So like the order conversation screen, this is a chronological view of everything that's happened with your fault, right from the second you logged it, through all the KCIs that Openreach have raised, any tasks and so on, they'll also appear here. So if I switch to one that was raised not that long ago, there we go. This is an ISDN2 fault that I logged about half an hour or so ago, which is now in clear unconfirmed. If I look at this conversation view screen, you'll see what it looks like sort of in a more real-world scenario with a few more KCIs and associated tasks and so on. Now, unfortunately, in Openreach's test system, they don't put engineers' notes in the faults. So this particular fault has reached clear unconfirmed. If I go back to check at it, you can see that in clear unconfirmed, which, as we know, is Openreach speak for we think we have fixed the fault. And there's now 2 additional shortcuts here to confirm the clear or reject the clear, obviously based on what the end user tells you when you contact them. Top right, there are a couple of tasks that have been created. So just like orders, when interesting things happen to faults, we raise tasks. So in particular, we raise tasks when an engineer picks up the fault. So in this particular example, you can see here that we raised the fault assigned to engineer task, and we've also raised a task to tell you that trouble report is clearable. So if I go to the task tab, you can see that these 2 tasks appear at the top of the list. So if this was your work list of things to do, and you come back from lunch and refresh the page, you'd see that, if you ignore the bottom 2, there's 2 new tasks here in relation to a fault. So you can click on that task, you can go to the associated trouble report to sort of familiarize yourself with it. So, oh yeah, I know this is the one. Speak to the customer. Customer says, yep, the fault has been fixed. So you would hit confirm clear, and clear the trouble report like that. So this is sort of a simple trouble report screen. So whenever you interact with an order or a fault, like cancelling it, rejecting a clear, changing an appointment or so on, there's this sort of child order, which if I go and look at the parent fault, this is where we were a few seconds ago, you can see there's orders acting on this trouble report, and here I am confirming or rejecting the clear. So if we were to view the conversation view screen now, you'd see right at the bottom, the last action was a task was raised by Openreach to say it's cleared. We raised the clear accept, and then Openreach have confirmed trouble report, clear, confirm, accepted. Now, engineers' notes, obviously they are important, and it is a shame that we can't see them in the test environment. So if I flip to the live environment, I've found an example here of a engineer's notes within the conversation view screen. So here you can see that this is a fault that an engineer has been working on, and he's entered some notes there to say, I spoke to Mrs. Shaw, etc., etc. And then further down, you can see that even more notes were assigned to this trouble report. On this, the fault is in the end user's house going to the extension socket, arrived on site and found fault on customer's own wiring, etc., etc. So you can see that on the conversation view screen, this is where you would see this information. Now, if I go and log a fault on a line that I've set up a fault scenario on, so it's possible within Openreach's test environment to configure certain scenarios, so you can see how the system behaves when a fault has actually been found, because obviously the first one we looked at was no fault found. I know that this line should return a fault. So if I hit no dial tone and perform a line test, so in a few seconds, if Openreach's systems have decided to behave, we should see the result of the line test come back and should tell us that there's a fault in the local network. And you'll notice that the options, there we go. So test results failed, fault located in local network, there's a high resistance imbalance detected in the network, and the only option you've got is to raise a trouble report. You'll notice that the book trouble report with appointment option is missing, because we know that this particular fault scenario is not one that requires an appointment. And so you don't need to worry about do I or don't I book an appointment. You just hit raise trouble report and then enter all the various details. So contact details, description of the fault, just like we did before. Premises close time, 8:30, opens tomorrow at 10 o'clock. So there we go, just like the previous fault. Now if we go and look at this, you'll notice that there is no appointment date showing here because this wasn't a fault that was appointed. Okay, so I think that's pretty much everything covered from a fault perspective. So we've covered how to begin the fault process, which is by searching by telephone number, how to kick off the particular fault, and the system will ask you whether a line test will make you do a line test if it thinks one is necessary, and so on. What you'll notice is if you attempt to log a fault on a line that already has a fault open on it, we show you this little warning message here. This is just an example of some of the messages we show you in the portal. So as you may have found in the past, if you try and log a fault on a line that's already got a fault open on it, Openreach will just reject it with a validation fail message. Whereas in our system up front, we kind of tell you, hey, it's probably not worth your while logging this because there's already one open, and here's where that open fault is, so you can go take a look at it. Yeah, and we've also covered the conversation view, so where you go to see the engineer's notes, and also how you would interact with that fault via the shortcuts link here. So ultimately, if the fault goes away, you can cancel it. If a customer wants a different appointment, you can book a new appointment. If you need to send bits and pieces of information to Openreach in a scenario where they've asked you for more information, you can do that here, and then various other parts of the fault. And ultimately, when this hits clear unconfirmed, there'll be the two links there to clear or, to accept the clear or to reject the clear. So yeah, I think that's pretty much everything covered. Chris, I don't know whether there's any questions or anything you'd like me to cover in more detail.
Sorry, I just had to unmute myself. The other thing I just noticed was about the view my watch faults and stuff. Is that where you're able to sort of flag particular faults to watch and see what's going on with them?
Yeah, that's right. So view my watched faults. Now, when you have the particular role set up in the system, watch my faults, what that really means is every one of your faults, whenever tasks are raised, they'll be sent to your email address. And that's what I've got set up here. So there isn't, unfortunately, an option for me to watch this fault. However, if, say, this was if I didn't have that role, or this was a fault raised by one of my colleagues, when I looked at this fault, there would be a new button here, watch this fault. And that's my way of saying, hey, I want email updates about this as well, and I want to sort of add this fault to my watch list of things I care about. And when you do that, it would appear under View My Watched Faults. So you'll notice, yeah, there's obviously a message here. All of my faults are automatically being watched, so they're not shown in this screen. And yeah, the same is true of orders. If you're not by default watching all of your orders, then there's a button against each order to say, watch this one, and automatically you will get the tasks via email.
Okay, good, excellent. Okay, well then, I think that pretty much does cover it. So thanks, Matt. Thanks for your time again on this. Anybody who wants to field any questions, as I said at the beginning of the call, if you want to pop it across to myself or any of the resellers, if you want to pop it into sales support, they will then pass it on to me. I'll field it out to Matt and into SI, and then we'll get any answers then for you from there. There's another session tomorrow which is covering modify orders, change orders, dialogue services, and loss notifications, and if you're going to do TOSs, ceases, that sort of stuff. So if you're not already on it and you want to be on it, then please let me know. Other than that, I'll speak to you again on further sessions that we do. And again, thanks very much, Matt, and thanks for everybody for coming on.
Okay, no worries. Thanks, everybody.
John.
Has left the conference, 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 has left the conference.